Imagine waking up one morning to find out that your right to vote has been postponed because the people in charge decided it was just a bit inconvenient for them right now. Not canceled forever, mind you, just delayed indefinitely because, well, it suits them better that way. Sounds like something out of a dodgy Netflix drama about a dystopian future, right? Except this is happening right now in the United Kingdom in 2026, and Reform UK just delivered a 5-word message to Keir Starmer that should have number 10 absolutely bricking it. We're coming for you. And they don't mean on Twitter. They mean in the High Court of Justice with proper lawyers, proper legal arguments, and a very real chance of winning. Welcome to UK Political Insight, where democracy apparently needs defending in court now. Let's break down why Keir Starmer just got absolutely dragged on GB News, and why this story is so much bigger than you might think. Right, so let's set the scene. December 2025. Ministers announced that 63 councils are being given the option to postpone their May elections until 2027. The official reason? Local government reorganization. They're planning to abolish the 2-tier system of county and district councils and replace them with unitary authorities, which won't be ready until 2028. So in the meantime, let's just postpone some elections. Delay democracy for a couple of years. No big deal. Except it is a massive deal because 30 councils have now taken the government up on this offer, which means nearly 4 million Britons won't get to vote when they were supposed to. Now, Labour's spinning this as common sense. Starmer himself came out and said it's just a sensible question of whether to go forward with elections when the local authority structure is about to change anyway. Why bother with elections now when everything's going to be different in a couple of years? Sounds reasonable when you put it like that, doesn't it? Except here's the thing. It's not reasonable at all. It's the political equivalent of your boss saying, we were going to give you a pay review this year, but we're restructuring the company in 2028, so we'll just wait until then, yeah? You'd be absolutely fuming, and rightly so, because what you're hearing is your rights and interests can wait because it's more convenient for us. Enter Zia Yusuf, Reform UK's head of policy, who absolutely went off on GB News. And when I say went off, I mean he delivered the kind of verbal beatdown that makes you wince even if you're watching from home. He didn't mince words. He didn't do the politician thing of carefully hedging every statement. He went straight for the jugular. His message to Keir Starmer and what he called anti-democratic, cowardly councillors was crystal clear. Reform UK is coming for you in the High Court of Justice. That's not a protest. That's not a petition. That's actual legal action with actual consequences. And the fact that a High Court judge has already ruled that they can press ahead means this is deadly serious. The court date is set for February 19th and 20th. Mark your calendars, folks, because this is going to be absolutely box office. Reform UK will be formally objecting to what they're calling the denial of a vote to millions of Britons. And according to Yusuf, their lawyers reckon the law is actually on their side. They've got a real chance of winning. Can you imagine the scenes if Reform UK successfully sues the government and forces them to hold elections they tried to postpone? The political humiliation would be off the charts. Starmer would have to explain how his supposedly democratic Labour government got taken to court and lost for trying to delay elections. You literally couldn't write it. What makes this even more delicious is the context. According to polling experts, if the May elections had gone ahead as planned, Reform UK would have absolutely wiped out the Labour Party at local level. That's not speculation. That's what the polling was showing. So you can see why Labour might be quite keen on postponing these elections, can't you? It's got nothing to do with administrative convenience and everything to do with political survival. When you're facing electoral annihilation, suddenly reorganizing local government becomes very urgent and postponing the vote becomes very sensible. It's transparent, it's cynical, and Reform UK is calling them out on it in the most public and legally binding way possible. Nigel Farage described the potential delay as outrageous, and for once, the hyperbole actually fits. This is genuinely outrageous. Democracy isn't something you postpone when it's inconvenient. The whole point of having fixed election dates is that governments can't just shift them around whenever the polls look bad. Imagine if Boris Johnson had said in 2024, actually, the general election's not convenient right now. We'll do it in 2026 instead. There would have been riots. But apparently, when it's local elections and Labour's doing it, we're supposed to accept it as common sense. Yousaf's language during the GB News interview was absolutely pointed, and deliberately so. He called these councillors anti-democratic and cowardly and said they're colluding with Starmer to rob people of their right to vote. Those are strong words, but are they inaccurate? These councillors have been given an option to postpone elections that would likely see them kicked out of office, and they've taken it. That's not standing up for democracy. That's clinging to power. And the fact that they're able to do this because the government's given them legal cover doesn't make it any less cowardly. The phrase, "we're coming for you," is absolutely perfect political messaging. It's threatening without being actually threatening. It's clear, it's memorable, and it positions reform as the defenders of democracy against an establishment trying to rig the game. Whether you like reform or not, you've got to admit their media game is absolutely on point. They know how to generate headlines, they know how to frame themselves as the underdog fighting the system, and they know how to make labor look like the authoritarian bad guys. What's particularly clever about taking this to court is it forces labor to defend the indefensible in a legal setting where sound bites and spin don't work. You can't just waffle about local government reorganization in front of a high court judge. You have to make actual legal arguments about why postponing elections is justified, lawful, and proportionate. And according to Yousaf, reform's lawyers think those arguments are going to fall apart under scrutiny. The assessment is that the law is on reform's side, which should terrify labor, because if they lose this case, the implications are massive. Think about what a loss would mean. First, immediate political humiliation. The government gets legally forced to hold elections it tried to cancel. Second, it sets a precedent that you can't just postpone democracy for administrative convenience. Third, it would energize reform's base and validate their claims that they're the real defenders of British democracy. And fourth, it would force those May elections to go ahead, which, remember, the poll suggests would be an absolute bloodbath for Labour. It's a nightmare scenario for Starmer, which is probably why his government is scrambling to prepare their legal defense. The government's deadline to file their defense is February 16th, which gives them just a few weeks to come up with legal arguments that can withstand judicial scrutiny. Yousaf made a point of reassuring GB News viewers that reform has first-class lawyers working around the clock on this. That's not just bluster. Reform is clearly taking this seriously, investing proper money and legal expertise, because they think they can win, and they know how devastating a victory would be. What's fascinating about this whole thing is the framing. Labor's trying to present it as boring administrative necessity, local government reorganization, unitary authorities, efficiency, modernization, all very sensible and dull. But reform has successfully reframed it as a democratic outrage, an attempt to deny millions of Britons their right to vote because the government is scared of losing. And you know what? That framing is more accurate. If this was really about administrative efficiency, there's 1,000 ways to handle local government reorganization without postponing elections. The fact that they've chosen this route tells you everything you need to know about their actual motivations. The number is worth dwelling on. Nearly 4 million Britons won't get to vote in elections they were expecting to participate in. 4 million. That's not a rounding error. That's not a minor administrative detail. That's a huge chunk of the electorate being told, sorry, not this time, maybe in a couple of years, if we feel like it. And these aren't people in areas where nothing's happening. These are people in areas where there are clearly significant political shifts underway, areas where reform is surging and labor is vulnerable. Yousaf's comment that these councillors will forever live in infamy is quite something. He's basically saying they'll be remembered as the people who were so scared to face voters that they postponed democracy itself. That's a hell of a legacy to carry around. And he might be right. If this case goes ahead and gets significant coverage, if reform wins, these councillors who voted to postpone will be named, shamed, and politically toxic. Nobody wants to be known as the coward who canceled elections because they were going to lose. The two-tier council system that Labour wants to abolish has been around for decades. It's not some urgent crisis that's suddenly emerged. If they genuinely wanted to reorganize local government, they've had months to plan this properly, to consult, to prepare, and to do it in a way that doesn't involve canceling elections. The fact that they're rushing this through now with elections looming that they're going to lose is suspicious at best and corrupt at worst. Starmer's defense of the policy has been characteristically weak. Calling it a common-sense question is the kind of meaningless political speak that infuriates voters. There's nothing common sense about denying people the vote. Common sense would be holding elections as scheduled and dealing with any administrative complications afterwards. Democracy comes first, administrative convenience comes second. That's actual common sense, but apparently it's not Starmer's version of it. The parallels with other situations where governments have delayed or manipulated elections are uncomfortable. When you see dictatorships postponing elections, we rightly call it out as authoritarian. When democracies in other parts of the world do it, we raise concerns about democratic backsliding. But when a British government does it, we're supposed to accept it as sensible administration. The double standard is glaring, and reform is absolutely right to challenge it. What's particularly galling is that Labour spent years in opposition banging on about democratic reform, protecting democratic norms, and respecting the will of the people. And now they're in government, they're postponing elections because it suits them politically. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. It's one thing to be cynical about politics, but it's another thing entirely to watch a party abandon their principles the moment they become inconvenient.